We feel so much love and appreciation for your willingness to be in this body. It's a good body. We have so much appreciation for you to be willing to play your role in our co-creation, because you've got the hard part. You're out here on the bleeding edge where you're exposed to conditions that you take in and sometimes you take to heart. And you knew when you made the decision to do it that you'd see some things that you didn't want to see, but you knew it was worth it because you knew out of seeing what you didn't want that you would be able to, in the unique way that is you would be able to come to conclusions about improvements, not just for you, but for the people you love and for the world that you love. You knew that these ideas would burst out of you, and you knew that when they did, that there'd be a gap, because you knew that the very contrast that provided you the launching of the rocket was going to hold you in contradiction to the new rocket for a while. But you knew that we would keep our promise to you. That's why you weren't surprised to meet up with us. You knew that we would keep our promise and that we would not take our eyes off of your goals, of your objectives. And you knew that that's how it worked. But somehow you did a little tricky twist on yourself, because you've decided to beat up on yourself for not always easily going right along. You say to yourself, I know this stuff, why don't I just go with that flow? And the answer to that is because law of attraction won't let you, and that's a normal thing. And sometimes it has to get worse and worse and worse before you ask for more and more and more. But it gets easier and easier for you all the time. Have you noticed that? We are taking so much delight in how much you do catch on to right away, and how much resistance you're leaving aside, and how much resistance that was one time active in you, a lot, that is no longer active or rarely active within you. And so our wish for you is that you feel about you as we do. And of course, that's not a possible thing, really, because you are your perspective and we are our perspective. But we are dominant, and we do have you outnumbered. We really do know who you are, and at moments when you are in lesser resistance, you get more and more sweeping feelings of who you are. So that feeling of resonance that we were talking about, you're feeling more of the time, and when it comes, you know it. And now what we're really hearing from you is not that you don't know, and not that you aren't often in complete alignment with it, but that the sublime of the alignment is so sublime that you can't bear it when you're not. Well, you've just got to suck it up. You've just got to accept that it's going to be that way, that it can't feel good when you're not in alignment, and it always feels good when you do, and both are part of the bargain that you struck when you decided to come. So it's time for you to stop beating up on yourself for every little bit of negative emotion. Esther saw coffee spilled all over all of them, and she said, I did that. And there was something about the universe humorously delivering to her something that was a vibrational match to how she was feeling, that made her feel extra, extra loved. Isn't it nice that law of attraction responds to you truly, honestly? That law of attraction doesn't play games with you, that it's always consistent? And isn't it a wonderful thing that we, your inner beings, stand in full appreciation of you no matter what you're doing? And isn't it nice to know that the way you feel can't be separated from the way we feel? Aren't you glad to know that you have all of these options? And aren't you glad to be in an environment of such freedom, where you're free to think whatever thoughts you choose to think, and that the thoughts that you think are always in relationship to the thoughts that your inner being is thinking? Can you imagine a more perfect guidance system than that? Don't you feel blessed that every step that you take, you have someone else walking with you and loving you and knowing you and not doing it for you? Would you want us to do it for you? You would not allow us to do it for you. Even if we could do it for you, you would not want us to do it for you. Because you are the creator of your reality. You are a leading edge being out here on this leading edge. And we are your support system, and what you accomplish, we all benefit from. But this is your game that we are all involved in. And it's a big game, and it matters immensely to all of us. And there is great love here for you. So the best thing that you took from all of this is that when I feel bad, I'm extra loved.
Right.
That's what that means. Source must be really loving me because I'm really hurting as I block it off. And I don't have to block it off. I'm just choosing to, because I have some stupid thing that I've been thinking about that's causing me to feel sorry for myself again. I've chosen the victim role again. I'm feeling vulnerable again. And my inner being isn't having any of it, because if my inner being were in agreement, I'd feel great. But my inner being isn't having any of it. And so, how about that?
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah.
My question would be based on consistency. I know things are always working out for me.
Yeah, eventually.
I do know that when I have a desire, that from step 1, I understand step 2, and I get to step 3, and then it's like I'm going and it's rolling, I'm tuned in, turned on, tapped in, I'm ready, I'm there, and I start to see some manifestations
Yes.
as they come.
Yes.
And then I get a little bothered because I get upset if it doesn't continue.
Well, step 4 is getting really good at step 3, and we'd say you're there because you're often very good. But step 5 is being back in step 1 and not being mad about it. Step 5 is recognizing that there's contrast, but being steadier in the contrast than you were before. The way Esther plays that out for herself is that when something happens and she knows she's wobbling, she'll say, boy, last time this happened, I was a week in turmoil, and this time it was 5 minutes. In other words, just acknowledge the degree of steadiness that you've accomplished and how much less suffering is happening because you're not in that discordant place, not for long.
That's been a problem. And I understood, and I've heard you say several times about
What do you mean?
getting to step 5. And I shouldn't say problem, but
You mean being willing to accept that contrast is part of the process?
understanding it a little bit more. I'm getting a little better at understanding the contrast.
So here's a sort of silly, but it'll do the job analogy. So you live in a house and the house isn't really what you want. And so you get some ideas about what you want, so you move into another house. And it's a lot better, but it still isn't what you really want. And so you move into another house and it's a lot better, but it still isn't what you really want. And you wonder, seems like that first house should have helped me get clear about what I want. But no, I was lazy. I wasn't very defining. In fact, I didn't speak enough about what I liked about the house. And so the second house was a little better, but not that much better. Well, what we're getting at here is you find more clarity, more clarification. It's like life is the great clarifier. It helps you to define the question. And we want to ask you, if you don't have a question, could there be an answer? And isn't the question important to the answer? You saw some people on the platform today with not very clear questions, and they didn't get very clear answers back, did they? So isn't a clear question essential to a clear answer? So isn't getting back into contrast always going to be important and valuable? And shouldn't you therefore embrace it as an important part of the clarifying process?
But see, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I understand that, but when the contrast has come,
We know that.
then it seems like
And so are you telling us that these words don't teach? You are, and it's all right. We tell you that. Words don't teach. In other words, conceptually it makes sense. Yeah, I can see how contrast, but instead of going to that thought, which I'm thinking right now, which seems like a really good thought, I don't. I default to I'm not good instead. I default to the thought that I've thought the longest in my life. I'm not good. I'm not good at this. I'm not doing a good job. I should be doing better. Others are doing better. That's the thought that you default to, even though there is an active thought that in time will be the dominant active thought, and it is the dominant active thought of your inner being. And so when it is the dominant active thought of your inner being, but it's not the dominant thought of you, what do you feel? Negative emotion. So what's the negative emotion telling you? Oh, my inner being feels differently about this. I'm choosing to say I'm not good at this and that I should be doing better, and that this contrast shouldn't be happening to me. And my inner being is saying, great job. You just clarified with coffee all over your feet. Esther could have sat there and just felt despondent. She could have thought, oh, I teach this stuff. Tomorrow I'm going to be on a stage and people are going to be expecting Abraham to say important things, and look at how I've created my reality. But she didn't. Instead she said, that is evidence of what I had going on. And what I had going on was not being willing to vie for my own well-being, to ask for what I want. You're all trained, Esther too, especially Esther, to be of service and to give up her seat for someone else. She's given up her first-class seat for someone who could use it better so many times because their foot was hurting, or their seat was awkward, or they wanted to sit next to their mate, or they were sick. So many times, because somewhere in your experience you have taught yourself that service is about sacrifice, and it never is. Service is about alignment so that you've got something to serve with. So when you're rolling along, rocking and rolling, like you're saying, and you're feeling good and things are going good, and then you step into some contrast, next time it will be easier for you as you say, I'm not taking this very well. I'm not doing a good job of step 5 because I've slipped back into step 1 and I'm mad at myself. I'm not joyful about the clarifying experience. We want so much for you to understand. If you had any idea how often you get into alignment and your inner being leads you right into trouble for more clarification. Well, thanks a lot, inner being. But how are you going to get clarification? Words don't teach. Your inner being can't tell you. We have deciphered your vortex and we know everything you want and the perfect path. It takes a lot of experience before you really know that. Meanwhile, you've just got to accept things are always working out for you no matter how it looks. No matter how it looks, things are working out for you.
And I believe that. I say it constantly all day.
But that sort of flies in the face of what you just said, doesn't it? So which do you believe more? Things are always working out for me, or when I slip back into contrast, I'm doing something wrong? Which do you believe more?
Things are always working out.
Things are always working out for you. So next time you slip back into contrast, just remind yourself, things are always working out for me, and somehow this contrast is part of things working out for me. So what's this contrast doing? How's it stirring up the question? How's it stirring up the problem? Because if it's stirring up a problem or a question, it's stirring up a solution too. And now you're meditating and in the receptive mode now, the more problems you stir up, the more solutions you're going to receive. So when your inner being sees that you got that thing going, that you've primed that pump, then you're going to have lots of experiences for clarification. Because if there's anything we've heard you say, more than all other things perhaps put together, is that you want to understand this, you want to live it, you want to be an example of it, you want to teach it, you want to teach through the clarity of your example.
Yes.
And that's why nothing makes you madder than when you don't think you're in that role, but you always are, you see. If we were standing in your shoes, any of your shoes, and we were in a bad mood because something had happened and we're focused upon it, and you just can't feel good looking at that, and you don't have the self-discipline yet to look away, and that's all right. It surprised you. Now you're looking at it. And so someone you care about, maybe those you consider your students, maybe your own children, somebody you care about observes you in this negative frame of mind. We'd like you to look right at them and say, I'm in a really bad mood because I'm not allowing myself to be who I really am, because I'm looking at something in a way that my larger self is not seeing. Now, you don't need to say all of those words to them, but you want to mean it when you look at them. I'm in a bad mood. And then say, if you'll excuse me for a little bit, I'm going to go off, get myself back in alignment, and when I do, I'll be back. Then go. Get in alignment and come back, because it is our promise. If you try to get back into alignment while you're standing in front of people who have already evaluated you and decided that you're not in alignment, that's the hardest possible place to be in. Don't do it in front of them, but tell them what you're doing. I'm out of whack, gonna go get back into whack. I'll be back. I'll be back when I'm back in whack.